Whoa!
Yeah, I told you.
Oh my God.
What the hell was that?
Hello, sorry, my mic was on.
Oh, no, it's okay. For all of you joining us tonight, thank you so much for being on time. I really appreciate it. We'll get started in 2 minutes. I'm just going to wait a bit longer. But yeah, yep. All right, so it's 6:03. I'll keep my eye on the participants and also let us begin. So to all the scholars and recent alumni and alumni who are joining us tonight, thank you so much for joining us and coming to this discussion. I think it's going to be a wonderful event. So before I begin, before our speakers introduce themselves, I want to tell you guys more about our partnership with Junior League of Minneapolis. For those of you who don't know what the Junior League of Minneapolis is, they are an organization of women committed to promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, and improving communities through the effective action and leadership of trained volunteers. So they're an awesome group. They are huge supporters of Wallin Education Partners and just really great partners, especially in the realm of education and their commitment to developing the potential of women. And so it's really awesome that three of them are with us tonight. And I'm just really excited for you all to meet them because they're wonderful people. And so with that, if Krista, Maida, Shanti, if you guys one of you want to kick off, introduce yourself with name, where you went to college, what you majored in, and what you're doing now would be awesome.
I'll go. My name is Krista Forsberg. I have my undergraduate degree in marketing and English from Iowa State University, and then I have my MBA from the University of Minnesota at the Carlson School of Management. I spent my career, most of it in corporate America, but several years ago made a career shift, and now I'm a real estate agent.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Maida Webb, and I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in nursing. I spent about 4.5 years as an emergency trauma nurse. I won't get into those stories. Those are the better stories of my career. After that, I went into medical device sales, where I worked as a clinical nurse consultant. And I now too am in real estate. I've had my license for 10 years and I run a small team with my husband.
Hey, I'll round us out. My name is Shanti Miller. I go by CJ. I went to the University of Northern Colorado. I have a bachelor's of arts in journalism and mass communications. I spent most of my career in retail management and just recently in the last couple of months shifted, and I am the client coordinator now for a real estate investment company called Homestead Road here in the Twin Cities. So new opportunities are abounding during the pandemic for me. So very excited to talk to you guys about that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And so before we begin this discussion, I really want to let all the scholars know that this event is to give you all, tangible, actionable advice for how you all can navigate your career successfully, whether that is looking for your next research or internship opportunity for the summer, finding your first real job after graduating, or if you're looking to change careers too. So hopefully you all will find this useful, and also during this conversation have questions of your own that you can ask all of our speakers at the end. And so I'll definitely leave room at the end, probably the last 15 minutes. And so if you have any questions, just feel free to save them for the end or write them in the chat box, and then we can look through them and try to answer them all. And so, yeah, so I think the first question that's most relevant right now to our scholars, for Shanti and Krista, it's how do you make yourself marketable via resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profiles, etc. during this time of COVID, especially since job hunting looks differently now?
You want to go or you want me to?
You can go first.
Thanks. So I think this is a really interesting question. I mean, I think especially as you're thinking about getting into those first jobs. And as I think about it in COVID, some of the things are really the same, but there's a few tweaks. I would say start with your LinkedIn profile. Now is the time to invest some energy, make sure you're really calling out kind of a great headline for yourself. You're pulling in your strengths, some of the things that you're looking forward to doing in a career, and really calling that out. You want to make sure that you have a professional headshot with no background. That's really critical. You also want to make sure that you are customizing your LinkedIn profile with your name, so that it is, LinkedIn/in/your name versus kind of the random assignment that LinkedIn will give you. And then really think about how can you connect with, whether it's professors you've had, potentially first employers, or other people in your network that can create those references and then help to make introductions for you. I would also say now is a great time to be following companies on LinkedIn and paying attention to what they're talking about within their industry. And then now is also a really good time to be thinking about, as you're entering the workforce, quite frankly, clean up your other social media. Employers will be looking at that, and it's really, really critical. And then I would say specifically with Zoom and kind of the time of COVID, you're not going to be doing as many in-person meetings. And so take some time to invest in setting up your kind of Zoom station. So you have, great lighting, that your audio works on your computer, all of those things, and then be doing those networking meetings the same way by getting prepared, connecting with your network, asking them to make introductions, and then making sure that you're doing kind of that typical good follow-up you would outside of COVID.
Yep, I would definitely agree. And I would add on to that as well. When you're submitting your resumes, make sure you have a really good cover letter to go with them, and make sure your personality really shines through the cover letter, because now more than ever, employers are really wanting you to kind of pop off of the screen a little bit and see how you shine. And they're taking your cover letter and really your LinkedIn profile, and that's how they're kind of categorizing you. I know during my job hunt, if I would apply, I could see immediately like, oh, that HR person just looked at my LinkedIn profile. Oh no, they didn't like me. Like, you kind of go into a little bit of a panic, and then you go and you spruce it up a little bit. So you do get those instant hits, and you kind of see where you want to tweak. And feel free to reach out to them too and say and ask questions of where I need to improve. And I had a couple of people give me feedback of, you are great for this role, but not really for our company. Here's what we're looking for. And yes, they were strangers to me, but they're still great resources, and everyone's here to help. So
Absolutely.
reach out to those HR people as well, as you see them kind of peeking into your LinkedIn profile. But really, the cover letter and letting your personality shine is huge.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So all three of you spoke to changing your career. I know you all aren't doing what you guys originally did before. And so I think what are important professional relationships to cultivate, and how do you leverage those relationships to be successful? So how do you leverage those relationships to when you're looking to change careers, when you're looking to negotiate a higher pay raise or a promotion? How do you do that?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is to find a mentor. Find a mentor either in the career that you'd like to get into, but find mentors that are in your field and outside of your field, because you just never know. I think it's more common than not that people make a career change. You know, you go to school, you study something, you absolutely think you're going to go down one path and you might not. And so I think always keep your doors open. And especially during this time when you're looking for jobs, have a lot of informational interviews, ask a lot of questions, be very honest with people when you're setting those appointments, of just saying, hey, could I have 15 minutes or 30 minutes of your time? It's easier now that you don't have to drive somewhere and actually sit down and have a cup of coffee. And so if you could just say, could I have a phone call and just have 15 or 30 minutes of your time? Tell me about how did you get in, to the position that you're in. And then always go back to those people when you are looking for another career, or you're looking for a raise. Those mentors will always give you really good advice. And then the other thing I said is never stop learning. No matter what, you're just getting started. There's so much information out there, but never stop seeking information, because there's always something more to learn. And I think the more value you have, the more that you can bring to the table. And you can be very specific when you're going for a specific position. You can be very specific when you're looking for a raise or you're negotiating a salary. You can always bring that information to the table.
I think that's I think that's exactly it. Really thinking through who's that mentor or mentors that can guide you throughout your career, and then help create introductions. I often, even today, think about that as my board of directors, right? Who's at the table that I can go and ask for, candid feedback and advice, potentially do role playing with. Especially you think about that from asking for a raise or negotiating your first salary, having someone that you can kind of practice with. Or ask some of those questions outside of, maybe a person you're interviewing with, I think is really valuable. I think the other thing to think about at this point is how do you on a long-term basis keep those relationships intact by staying in touch, right? These are the people you're going to keep going back to and asking for advice, asking for connections, and hopefully over time you're reciprocating that. But you don't want the only time you go to that person to be when you need something. And so think through, how do you have a routine with staying in touch with those people so that it can be a meaningful connection that can help support your career goals.
No, I agree. And I like how Krista phrased it as the board of directors for your own personal life, because you want a different team. You want the truth teller, you want the personal cheerleader, you want the tough love, and you need all of those people in your corner to kind of give you that sage advice. And I think no matter where you end up in your career, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, one person who I always befriend in a company is the administrative assistant. They are the gatekeeper to everyone and everything. Always befriend them, because you never know when you're going to need them. They have the eyes and ears of HR, the upper level leadership. They know everything, and they are a vault of information. So always keep them in your back pocket as well.
Awesome. That sounds so. Yeah, I'm also taking down notes as I am listening to you, all three of you. The next question I want to ask is related to imposter syndrome. And so I feel like with a lot of our scholars who, with their backgrounds, there's just a lack of confidence. And so how can they build that? And so if Shanti, Krista, Maida, you two, can you share a time when you experienced imposter syndrome, and what did that experience teach you? And then a two-part question. The second part is, how do you build confidence, resiliency skills, and maintain a sense of empowerment in the workplace when faced with difficult interpersonal dynamics?
Those are good questions.
Yeah.
I would say, so I'll start with the imposter syndrome. I think that is really a natural tendency as you're getting into the workplace. I think another key point when that happens is when you're managing your first team or when you're in your first leadership role, you kind of look around the table and go, wait, how did I end up in this role? I'm not qualified. And I think that's when you do go back to that board of directors that you have and, have them reinforce what your skills are. And know that not everyone, everyone around the table is having those same thoughts. And your best way to really get over those concerns is to dig in and work hard. It really is about, I hate to say it, believing in yourself and doing the work, but then having those cheerleaders around you that will help to support you and give you advice. Another thing I will say with that is if you're in a circumstance where you're feeling like you're over your head or you need to get some more information, a really good tip or tactic is to go back to that network of yours and say, okay, who do I know in my network that can help me maybe fill in gaps that I'm not feeling confident in? I'll share as a personal example. I have a very good friend of mine who she recently moved into a marketing leadership role in a new industry. She's been in marketing for years. She's worked at advertising agencies. She's worked in leadership roles in companies, but this was a new industry for her and there was a ton of jargon and she was just feeling behind, particularly with COVID. She's not getting those kind of personal hallway conversations. And so she actually reached out to me and was like, who do you know? And I was like, oh, okay, you need some people in the banking industry. And I was like, okay, well, I know this person who does this person who does this other person from a networking group that I have. Why don't you start to meet with them and fill in those gaps so that when you get back to your office, you feel like you're smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, like I just recently made a jump into a new industry. So more days than not, I'm feeling the imposter syndrome. Like, am I actually capable of this? And I think also too, like, I know looking just kind of at the screen for a lot of women of color, it kind of goes hand in hand with tokenism too. Like, was I given this position because I'm qualified or because I'm a woman or because I'm a woman of color? And you really start to second guess a lot of your own abilities. But it's just like Krista said, over time, you build that confidence and like, okay, I may be new in this industry, but I'm not new in some of the specifics of the role. Like I'm doing a lot of logistical work and no, I haven't done real estate for very long, but I have done logistical work for over 10 years. So I have that confidence backing me up to justify those negative inner monologues that I kind of go through it during the day when people question me. And I'm like, should I be questioning myself? Why are you questioning me? And you have these inner monologues all day long, especially during COVID, when sometimes you're sitting by yourself and you don't have that person to bounce ideas off of. And so it does take that confidence boost, and you're going back to your cheerleader who you have on your board of directors who boosts you up when you need it. And being able to boost yourself up too is a big thing, because when you need that validation at work, you don't always get it, and you don't always get it from who you need it from. So having that person in your network is crucial for just day-to-day survival sometimes.
The one thing, man, not to jump in before you answer this question, but the one thing too to think about that CJ mentioned when she was talking about kind of coming in and being maybe feeling like you weren't qualified for a job. I think as women in general, we have to be really careful about not giving ourselves credit for what we do. If you haven't already read it, I think it's a good study to look up. There's quite a bit of imposter research that started with some analysis that happened at Hewlett Packard around their hiring practices, and really not so much the hiring practices, but who was applying for roles within their organization. And what they found was women, when we looked at job descriptions, we would have to check off every single box on the list to be like, oh, we're qualified to do that job. And by comparison, men would look at a job description and be like, I can do about half of them. I'm totally qualified. And so I think as women, we have to give ourselves that kind of credit for what we know how to do. I think exactly like CJ said, like knowing how to do logistics, and there's going to be other pieces you learn along the way, and know that that's normal.
Thanks for sharing that, Krista. So I have a follow-up question to networking and mentorship and informational interviews. So let's say um, you meet someone, you have an informational interview with them, and you decide, oh, I like this person. I want this person to be, I want to stay connected to this person. How do you stay connected with that person besides adding them on LinkedIn? How do you keep that relationship grow? How do you cultivate that relationship? Is it a simple like happy holidays, or like let's grab a coffee like every other month, or how do you handle that? Yeah, cultivate that relationship.
Well, I would say first and foremost, this is advice through and through. Always write a handwritten card, no matter who you meet, no matter how briefly. If you meet someone in the grocery store and they give you good advice, follow up with a handwritten note. It's a lost art, but it can get you so far in just creating a connection with people. So I would say that's first and foremost to cultivate, even just as a thank you if you maybe never meet with them again. And then I always just think, like Krista said, don't just go to them when you need something. Maybe drop in and let them know what's going on, or check in and see what they might be up to, and then ask them, like, would you be open to meeting again, or should we do this in 6 months? How about if I follow up with you? You're going to know, you're going to know what feels right on both ends of the spectrum. But I would say, yeah, add them on LinkedIn, and then just put a reminder in your calendar, 6 months from the first time that you met them, to just check in and say, hey, how are you? And I guess I would also say, ask good questions, right? And let them talk, because you'll get so much from that person from listening. And so those would be my little tidbits.
The one thing I would add to that, and I think that's exactly it. It's how do you stay in touch, and how do you, kind of keep people up to date. I think one of the critical things when you're networking or trying to build that relationship is, especially with a mentor, is ask, how can you help them, right? Is there anything they need? And I think when you're starting out in your career, you probably think like you don't have anything to offer, but depending on who you're networking with, you might be able to offer social media advice, or how to be on Instagram, or how to maneuver Zoom, or, whatever else. There might be something that you can offer that person too that wouldn't immediately come to mind. So it can be more of a two-sided relationship versus just that one-way street.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So for Krista and Maida, how do you make sure you succeed without losing yourself? Do you have one non-negotiable? So a value or belief that you do not negotiate on. And Shanti, also feel free to chime in.
I guess I would say, the first thing for me when I think about this question is really to think about my why, and what's my bigger picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that comes in handy to remind yourself of that on a daily and weekly basis, because no matter what career you get into, especially as you're getting started and you're exploring careers, there's going to be days where you're asking yourself, how did I get here? What am I doing? And so really remembering your big why. And for me, I have a family, I have young kids. And so on those long work days, or those days that I feel like, oh, I don't know if this is the right fit for me, that is my why. It's a bigger picture as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. I also come at it from a standpoint of whatever career I've had, whether it's been nursing or medical device sales or real estate, is I want to help people. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing it to get to another level. And so that helps to ground me as well. For me, my one non-negotiable is integrity. If something doesn't feel right to me, or something, is not above bar, I walk away. And that's where I can very easily draw the line, whether it's with a client or it's with a referral partner. If it's not filled with integrity, then that's where I would draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo, understanding why you were doing, whether it's a job or volunteering or creating, relationships, knowing how that fits into your bigger picture is really important because it will help you sustain it. And I think absolutely knowing what kind of your values are and what you find to be important, and then staying true to those from an integrity perspective is key, right? And that's going to pop up in a whole host of ways, from honesty to delivering on what you say you will, and then finding those partners who are like-minded and know that it's okay to step back from a relationship or a job or anything else if it's crossing a boundary that makes you feel uncomfortable, whether it's asking you to bend the truth, or someone who is maybe using sexist or racist language in a way that makes you uncomfortable. No, those are all places where you can and should say, that's not okay for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So all three of you, you all three have careers. You all three have families. You guys are all in JLM. You all are doing volunteer work. How do you all juggle that and continue to just be like do everything? I think when I as I was getting to know all three of you, I was amazed at how much you guys were doing, and so I think, yeah, what's the secret, or what is one tip that you would share on how to juggle all of that, how to balance all of your interests?
I think for me, it's really just about like prioritizing myself when I need to. Like I have like Sunday afternoons, I won't make any plans and I call it like my self-care Sunday. And that's where at various points you could FaceTime me and I'm going to have a mask on my face, or I'm deep conditioning my hair, or I'm doing my nails. And those are just kind of like my personal non-negotiables, but it's how I reset for the week. Like I kind of turn off my phone a little bit and I just put on Friends or whatever's on Netflix that makes me feel good, and I'm able to kind of rejuvenate for Monday and go into the week with a fresh mind, and I feel good, and like I just feel rejuvenated and renewed, and that's kind of my thing. And pretty much every Sunday I've been able to stick to it, and it's just my me time and my self-care Sunday, and I've made it a priority to take care of myself and to put myself, at least for a few hours, ahead of everything else that I have going on.
I mean, I think staying focused on what your big goals are and what are the things that you need to do to get those done, and then don't let the little things kind of pull you off track. It's super easy to get caught up in busy work, whether that's your morning getting sucked away replying to emails and not getting like the thing that has to be done that day done. I know for me, starting out the day and going, okay, this is the number one priority for the day, and tackling that first really helps me make sure that I'm getting the most important things done. I know I've also done things like build in schedules where I'm like, okay, I start the week doing this, because I know if I get those tasks accomplished, even if the week gets a little wonky with some of the other things I've got going on, I will have gotten the most important stuff done.
Mm-hmm. I would say both of you kind of mentioned prioritizing. So I think that that's key. And then also realizing that you don't have to do everything. I went through a stage in my 20s where I felt like I had to say yes to everything. I had to be on every board. I had to volunteer. I had to go to everything. And so I think just evaluating like what you really want to do, because the things that you really want to do are the things you're going to be passionate about, and just staying true to yourself of what, what's your intent of joining, a board, or what's your intent of volunteering? What's your intent of going to a networking meeting? And if it doesn't align with your goals, I guess I would say don't feel like you have to do it. I think the other thing that's really important that I've learned as I've gotten older is the importance of being alone, and being alone without a phone, without any distraction, is where you will find yourself. You're going to learn more about yourself being totally alone in solitude. And so if that's just 5 minutes a day, or it's 5 minutes a week of just, like Krista said, scheduling it, and just whatever it is, doing a mask or whatever you do to renew yourself. But I think really focusing on being alone and figuring out what's really important.
Awesome. So the next question is, I think it, ne- it never hurts to develop or gain leadership skills. I think that's really important as you go up your ladder of success. And so, Maida and Shanti, what is your leadership style? Does that shift or change depending on what places you're in or who you're talking to? And Krista, feel free to chime in too if you have stuff to add.
For me, it always depends on who my audience is. When I first became like a manager, I was 19 years old. So everyone I managed was older than me. So I really had to learn quickly how to gain respect. And it was on a very individual level, and learning that just because one person receives information one way doesn't mean that everyone is going to receive the information the same way. And I really had to tailor my style to each individual that I was managing in order to get maximum results out of my team. So it's whether it was a team of 30 or a team of 10, I was managing that many different ways to get maximum results.
Yeah, I think it's important to lead people how they want to be led. And I would say my leadership style is one of, being someone who people want to follow or want to follow along with. I would say I'm more of I want to be more of a team player than an actual leader. I think everybody at the table, no matter what position they have, is of value. And so just recognizing that something can be gained from everybody who's at the table. One thing that I've used in actually every job I've ever had is the DISC assessment. And it can be really short. You can find it online, but it will reveal to you the type of personality that you are. But it also helps you to identify the type of personalities that you might interact with, either in a director or in a manager at work or with a coworker, and that helps you to understand how to collaborate and work. And so I would say that's always useful. It's just a free tool that you can find online. And then I guess really coming from a place of wanting to help people, of just really being a servant leader and, going forth with how can I be of value?
Mm-hmm. So.
And I'll add in as well, like one thing that I think a lot of managers forget is like how far the words thank you can go.
Yeah.
And you get so bogged down in what you have to do as a manager, and you're just so used to delegating tasks that like every day I would have my team, before they would leave, come tell me that they were leaving just so I could thank them personally to their face and just let them know how much I appreciated them being there. And we would start our days off with a huddle, and I would end the huddle with, I appreciate everything you do each and every day. Let's make it a great day. Just so we start and end every shift with positivity, because I wanted the whole day to just be enveloped with a positive attitude, especially in retail, like dealing with customers who weren't always that positive. Like I needed my team to know that like I'm wrapping my positivity around you, but thank you can get so lost sometimes that I would make it a point to tell them to their face every single day, just thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Because they don't have to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing I learned from a manager many years ago was whenever you're giving feedback, no matter who it is, a coworker or giving feedback to a manager or giving feedback to anybody, always start with something positive and then go into more constructive criticism. And so I do that with the people on my team. I try to do it with my kids. I'm not great at it. They're little, but always starting with something positive, it sets the tone versus going right into, your negative feedback about whatever it is that you're having an issue with. So I think that's also helpful.
I'll build on one thing too that Maida said about DISC. I think as a leader, it's important to know that there are times when you're going to be stressed and anxious. And I think one of the interesting things with DISC is you can actually use that tool to understand what your go-to mode is, which might change as a leader when you're stressed out. And that awareness will help you kind of moderate that reaction and understand how you're coming across as a leader. And if you're in a stressful situation, you might not realize it in the moment. So if you can spend some time thinking about it when you're not stressed, you might recognize it quicker and help to create kind of a more supportive environment for your team when you're working.
Awesome. So what sort of opportunities can our scholars find in their lives right now, or even if they have internships or when they start their first job, to build these leadership skills? Is that something as simple as volunteering to take the lead on a project, um, or yeah, how does that look like? How can they begin to build those skills?
I would say, definitely volunteer and raise your hand and, try to get that opportunity to work with your supervisor, your boss, have that chance to, kind of learn and grow. I also am a firm believer, because of the junior league, taking advantage of opportunities where you can go and volunteer and learn and develop skills outside of your workplace. One of the things we talk about in the junior league is that it is this place where we are training that next generation of women leaders. But part of what we're training you to do are skills that you can then take back to your workplace. And it's a safe environment to fail and get feedback. And so that might be a way too, especially as a new leader, you can build some of those skills and confidence in a way that then you'll show up differently at your workplace.
Mhm. All right. So this next question is related to race in the workplace. And so for all you three, how does race show up at work for you? And how do you address and process racial dynamics as a woman and as a woman of color?
I think for me, I have to really tread lightly when I'm in a disagreement with someone, because I never want to be perceived as like the stereotypical like angry Black woman, because that is something that is often perceived if I'm in disagreement, and it's not because I'm angry in any way. It's just I never want that to be the perception. And a lot of times, especially when I was in a retail management role, when I would be interacting with customers, the initial interaction, they would not always value my position as manager or not even realize that I was the end all be all manager. And so when they would get heated or upset, they would ask to speak to the manager and then find out it was me and not really give me the respect that I necessarily needed at the time. So that's been something that I've kind of had to combat. But
I think, certainly not being a woman of color, it's something that I have to deal with differently. And I think in particular this year, it's been a place where just given all of what's been going on, it's a place where I've spent, a lot of time having just conversations, right? And listening and learning, because I think that's the opportunity for me now. I would say, as a woman in the workplace, it is very easy to have some of those stereotypical labels placed upon you in a way that maybe men wouldn't. And so you think about if a man comes across as direct or demanding within a workplace, he's a strong leader. And a woman is much more likely to get a label like the B word. And I think that's really, really difficult, and definitely something that I faced throughout my career, because I do tend to be more direct. And, no, that was something that I actually, learned early on that I needed to moderate because of being a woman.
Yeah, I'm with Krista. I mean, not being a woman of color, I think this year I've had a lot of reflection and realizing the privilege that I am granted because I'm a white woman, and just some reflection on that, of what that means for some of the privilege that I've had, and how I've been able to navigate. And so the reflection for me this year, and how I see that in the workplace, has definitely changed over the last several months. But I agree. I think, as women, you can be direct and you can be confident. The fact that we have to tread lightly and react differently than a man is it's not necessarily fair, but it's the fact. And I find this sometimes, especially with other strong women, is where you have to be even more cautious. But I think, again, just falling back on remain confident and, be self-assured, because, you deserve to be there as much as anybody. So.
Mhm. Awesome, thank you. One last question before we'll open it up to the scholars. But have you ever disagreed with your boss or manager, and how did you handle it?
Well, I think absolutely everyone is going to encounter a time in your career when you don't 100% agree with the decision. And I think how you approach that is going to very much depend on what the situation is, where it's at in the decision-making process. I do think there is, an element of kind of understanding why the decision was made, and maybe, kind of thoughtfully voicing some concerns and seeking to understand. But knowing you might not have all the information too, especially if you're newer in your career. And I think it is an opportunity to, kind of question it and ask, and maybe come at it from a different position, and maybe your, boss will think about things differently and factor that into the decision. But I think there are also times early in your career when you are going to need to, as long as it's ethical and trustworthy and all of those things, kind of still, even if you voice your concerns, be prepared to move ahead kind of on the path that your boss wants, your organization wants. Again, with that caveat, it needs to be, legal, trustworthy, honest.
Mhm. All right, and then with that, I'll open it up to all of our scholars. Feel free to type it in the chat box or unmute yourself and then ask your question. Feel free to ask a question for all three of them, or you can definitely feel free to also ask a question directly to Maida, Krista, or Shanti. So yeah.
I guess I can go first. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are safe and sound and warm, especially here in the Midwest. It is like a snowstorm outside, but you all mentioned a lot about transitioning into different industry, or even like I feel like in all parts of your life, you all have transitioned to a different position, workplace. So how was that transition for you? And I think a lot of times we don't talk about that emotional transition. So overall, how are you as women able to navigate that and even like feel confident in making that step? Because I feel like a lot of times we are told we cannot do that. So yeah.
I think one thing to remember is that no matter what industry you're in, no matter what job you take, that there is a learning curve. And I would say no matter what, I mean, it's a minimum of 6 months, right? Just to understand the company, to understand the culture, to understand your role, to understand other people's roles. And so be patient with yourself, drink the knowledge as much as you can, and get as much as you can by asking questions, but be patient with yourself. Don't second guess yourself during that learning curve time, because, that's just when you're figuring things out. And just, like I said before, always seek more information whenever possible.
And I think just give yourself credit for the little things that you accomplish. Like, I'm just 2 months into a completely new industry, completely new role. And it's like, okay, I haven't cried yet. So that's really a win for me. Like, I haven't been so stressed that I've broken down in tears. Like, I'm going to call that a win. Cheers to that. So it's just taking credit for the little things. And like, okay, I've managed to get through that entire process without asking a single question. Like, I've gotten one thing down 100%. Like, kudos to me.
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself that encouragement is huge.
Especially now during COVID, like you said, because you don't have people around you. You're not sitting in an office where people are saying, hey, CJ, you did an awesome job. We're so proud of you. You're kind of in, a lot of us are working sort of in a silo. And so congratulating yourself is the right thing to do right now.
I think too, look at each opportunity kind of twofold. Every job you take is going to be a learning opportunity and going to help you build your skills as you grow in your career. And I think, know that while it's possible, that first role you find and that first career step that you take, it may be where you end your career. But it often isn't where it is, and you won't be able to tell that today, right? So it's each one of those steps will get you to where you are. I think we used to talk more about our careers being that ladder, and I like to think about it now as more of being a jungle gym, right? Like it's kind of a choose your own adventure and figure out where you end up, and it doesn't have to be linear.
See, there's, I don't know if you all can see the chat box, but one of the question is, what motivates you to change your career so much? Is it possible to never find your perfect job and keep looking for it?
That's a really good question. I've changed my careers based on where I was at in life and what I needed out of that time. I burnt out of ER nursing and I went into something else, and then that wasn't right for where I was at in life. And so instead of beating myself up over it, like, oh, why didn't I just stay a nurse? That's what I went to college for. It's a good career. I think it's just accepting where you're at and understanding that at different points along the way, you're going to need different things. Sometimes you need a higher paying job. Sometimes you need something with more flexibility. Sometimes you go into something where it's just totally fulfilling. And I think that's okay. That's kind of what life is all about, is just flexing and adapting. And that goes for every part of your life, but your career, especially, of, just filling what you need at that particular time.
And I'll agree, because I was in retail management for almost 14 years, and the whole shifting of what was happening in the world is what kind of changed my perspective on it. And I went into COVID with a team of 15 and ended up being a team of myself. And I had to operate an entire store and do all of these things that I normally had a team for. And I was on my own, and the company I was working for didn't know how to support us or navigate it, and nobody really did. And I mean, it broke a lot of us. And when you don't feel that support and you come home like beaten down, you kind of have to evaluate and say, is this what I really want with my life? And make that decision for yourself. And that's what I did, was I had to do what was best for me in the moment, and realize that the retail world that I entered back in 2007 was no longer in existence.
All right, the next question is, how do you push yourself to get out of your comfort zone?
For me, that's more about, I would consider myself kind of a lifelong learner, and I am definitely a person who sets those big goals and big expectations for myself. And so that in of itself sort of creates these moments where I'm like, okay, you've gotten to a point where you have plateaued, and now we need to go out and get some more knowledge or take on some new challenges to build some more skills. And that can be really scary, but I also, find it to be fun. And I do think setting it up in a way that you can break down, kind of getting outside of your comfort zone into maybe smaller steps helps too. Don't think about it having to be, from 0 to 100. Think about, okay, what do I need to do to make the first step? Is it, that first conversation, that first call to do an informational interview, not like, how do I get to a whole new career? Think about it in little bits.
Yeah, find the cheerleaders, right? You're always going to have some people who will will tell you you can't do it, but surround yourself with the cheerleaders, especially when you're trying to get out of your comfort zone. And then again, I've said it before, but go back, find the mentor, and ask them, how did you get where you are, or what advice do you have along the way? But surround yourself with good people who are going to keep you positive.
Mhm. All right, so Michaela asked, Maida sort of mentioned burnout. How do you handle career burnout? For all three of you, anyone, feel free to chime in.
Actually, I'm going to go back to CJ's answer about having like that self-care Sunday, right? So think about those moments where you're carving out time to take care of yourself, whether that's getting to the gym, eating healthy, and then go back and spend some time reflecting what's causing the burnout. Is it that you're, in the wrong work environment? Is it too stressful? What are those other things you can change, but take care of yourself first, and then figure out, is it because this is too boring, or is it because it's too stressful? And then that will help you figure out, what you need to do next, right? Is it find some other things outside of your career that can, provide excitement and kind of release? Or are you at a point where, the job you're in is unrealistically demanding and you need to think about maybe a new company?
Mhm.
And I think also kind of reflecting on what's causing the burnout. Like Krista said, is it stress? Like, do you need to reach out and have a conversation of setting boundaries? Like, I can't take on anymore right now. I'm feeling so stressed that this is no longer enjoyable. And I'm ready to walk away rather than pursue more opportunities within the company. So having those difficult but honest conversations, which they'll get you more respect in the workplace because you are being open and honest about what you're handling as a job load at the time.
Mhm.
I would say also make a clear distinction, focus on the things that you have control over, and sometimes easier said than done, but let go of the things that you do not have control over, especially sometimes in a big office setting. There's going to be, drama with, somebody else or something else that's going on, or somebody else is having trouble with a project. As much as you can, try to stay in your lane and really focus on the positive, focus where you can make change, and try to let the other things go. I think it just can allow you to free up some mental capacity, just to keep calm.
Mhm. Right. The next question is, how do you admire someone else's success without doubting your own self-worth? And then I think the next question that also ties into this is, how do you move forward when others doubt your abilities?
I think from the first part, admiring someone and, having someone that you can look up to gives you kind of a guidepost for how you can grow and build your career. I think it's important to remember that, just because someone else is great at a job, the greatness, it's not like a finite amount of greatness. So just because someone else is having good success doesn't mean you can't. And so instead, look at that person and try to figure out what are the different attributes that you can emulate and help to build those, to not only, grow your own skills, but, really help to reinforce your own self-worth of the things that you can do to improve. And then I think if other people are doubting your abilities, I think creating circumstances where you can build small wins and deliver on a consistent basis is really important, and understand, what those are. A simple thing, right, is if, you want to be seen as a responsible professional, and people are questioning that, what if they're questioning it because you're delivering work late, or you're delivering work that's not incomplete? And so think about what are those things that you can do, like getting to a meeting a couple minutes early, having a couple of prepared questions so that you're spending a little bit more time being prepared so that you can showcase your abilities and then have those examples to talk about, whether it's with a boss or a mentor, to help prove yourself.
All right. So there's a question. In a leadership position, how did or do you deal with disagreements or members not voicing their opinions? So how do you get your team members to speak out and voice their opinions against yours?
One thing that I would always kind of do is remove the take us away from the environment. So if I felt like a team member was holding back or not wanting to express their opinions, I would say, hey, let's go take a 15 and go grab coffee. My treat, like I just want to talk one-on-one away from everyone out of the store and kind of give us a neutral space and a neutral ground to have that conversation and make them feel more comfortable and not like we were sitting in my office and I'm in my manager's chair and I have on this special hat. Like, no, we're equals, we're both human beings, and I want to learn from them what's going on so I can improve their situation for them and just be keeping them engaged. Like team member engagement is huge, and it starts from before they're even hired. During that interview process, keeping someone engaged is crucial all the way till their very last day. So that's just something I always took pride in. And so I always practice an open door policy, but if they weren't feeling that, then I would remove myself and them from the environment and see if that would kind of break down that barrier.
I think that's spot on. I think as part of that, thinking through, especially if you're in a group setting and you have someone that's maybe reluctant to share their opinions, pay attention to the whole group too. I mean, because you potentially, if you have someone who always cuts down other people's ideas, you want to really reinforce listening to all of the ideas before coming to a decision. Because if you've got, a group that are always like, nope, can't do that, or someone who always knocks them an idea and before you get through the full discussion, it really creates a situation where people are like, well, I'm not even going to share my opinion because, so-and-so is going to tell me why it's wrong before I even get my idea out.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think being mindful of everyone's time, I think we'll close out on the last two questions, sort of merge them together. What advice would you give someone just starting to plan their career or to someone who just started their career? And then I think Maida, Shanti, and Krista, if it's okay with all three of you, to share your email in the chat box so that if our scholars do have questions, they can come back to you guys or find you guys on LinkedIn, your email or whatnot. That would be awesome. So yeah, so the last question again is, what advice would you give to someone just starting to plan their career or who have just started their career?
I think I would say recognize that your career path is going to be very fluid. Don't get focused on this job being the end all be all, that it has to be the perfect fit. It's just the next right step. And so do everything you can, learn as much as you can, and realize if it's not forever, that's okay, that it's the next best thing and you can continue to build from there.
I think look at every single role you have as a learning opportunity. And I think, just to echo Maida, it is very hard to start on day one of your career and think through where you will be, 20 years from that. Quite honestly, anyone who tells you that they've got that mapped out, wow, I'm impressed, because I don't know many people who have that figured out. So I think give yourself space and grace to learn over time and have your situation change, but be consistent with working hard, leading with integrity and learning, and you'll find success wherever you are.
Yeah, And I think also take note of how everyone around you is behaving, and whether they're the best employee, take note of what they're doing so that you can strive to emulate what they're doing and be more like them. And if they're the worst employee, take note of what they're doing so you don't repeat their
Good
mistakes.
advice.
You can learn from everyone that you come in contact with. So always be taking notes. Even that person you're like, they're terrible at their job. There's a reason why they're terrible. Don't do what they're doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much to the three of you. And thank you to all the scholars and alumni, recent alumni who are with us tonight. Thank you so much for spending 1 hour of your evening with me. But yeah, this has been awesome. It's just, yeah, thank you, Maida, Shanti, and Krista for your advice and for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of our scholars, recent graduates and alumni do as well. So thank you.
Well, good luck to everyone. This has been a pleasure.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening, guys.